Good morning, how are you? It's just gone 9:30 this Friday morning. I'm Lee Med, welcoming you to this great new webinar, which is brought to you in association with Dumfries Galloway Chamber of Commerce, Developing the Young Workforce, D&G, and the Team Doctor. The music you're hearing in the background, just to try and calm you down, try and ease you into your Friday morning a little bit, because everyone loves some Enya. Because, of course, she's associated with cool, calming thoughts and really reflectiveness. And that is hopefully what we are going to be exploring throughout the course of this morning's webinar. Because I'm going to be very honest with you. As a nation, we are doing an absolutely shocking job of looking after our mental health. And it's not just me that's saying that. There are facts and stats to back that up. Before the virus pandemic took hold, 75% of the UK adult population were in employment. 57% of all long-term absence at that time was due to stress at work. And again, those facts and stats come from the HSE. As a nation, we lose 137 million work days every year. Now that works out as 4.5 days for every worker in the UK, which means it costs us as a nation £100 billion per year. I'd ask you just to stop for a second and think about your team. Think about your workforce. And if each member of your team were able not to be ill, they were able not to be off for those 4.5 days, how much more work would get done? How much more productive would your business be? And most importantly, for some of us, how much better would your bottom line be? You know, a healthier, happier, more productive workforce is actually possible if we all as leaders, as managers and employers address the mental health crisis that is affecting us all. We need to address this as a matter of urgency. But how are we going to do that? Poor mental health affects both your bottom line and your staff retention. It's not something that we can afford to ignore as a COVID-induced recession is about to hit us all. We keep hearing this comment in the newspapers and the magazines, on TV. It's okay not to be okay. But what does that actually mean? I'd like you to think about that for the next 60 minutes. At the same time, I'd also like you to think about the term itself, mental health and well-being. What does that mean to you? We're going to explore those two subjects and look at ways that we can actually have a conversation with ourselves, with our team, with our workforce about that subject over the next hour. I'm going to bring in a whole series of guests and some panelists to get their views and their take on the subject. Some of them you will know, some of them are going to be introduced to you for the very first time, but they are all experts and they've all got opinions on this field. So at this point, I'm going to bring in somebody that is very familiar to many of us across Dumfries and Galloway. Arlo, one of the biggest employers in the region. A very good morning to Dawn. Dawn, how are you?
Hi Lee, very well, thank you very much. I think it's really important. I'm glad I was invited today to be able to discuss this really important topic. So thank you very much for that. I think we actually need in Dumfries and Galloway to recognise how important mental health is, and just not mental health, but the well-being part of it as well.
Indeed, it is something that we've been talking about for quite some time since the subject of doing this webinar came up. And it's great to know that there are businesses and employers such as Arla who really view mental health and well-being as a priority. But how do you do just that? How do you keep your workforce, which is one of the largest in Dumfries and Galloway, engaged and up to date, and actually have that conversation with them? Because I would imagine with a workforce of your number, there'll be shift patterns, there'll be people you probably don't see for days at a time. How do you make sure that that conversation is at the forefront of everything you do?
To be honest, it was a journey for us, Lee. We started thinking about mental health in a different way probably just over a year ago. And if you think that 1 in 4 of us will experience a mental health issue, or will likely know someone who is currently suffering from poor mental health, we recognised at Arla that mental health is just as important as physical health. We ourselves seen an increase in our colleagues being absent with stress, anxiety, depression, and we have a workforce that ranges from 20 to 60 plus, And we needed to understand how we could support all of these colleagues and every age in between. And we had to learn how to do that. We recognised the need to understand mental health and what that actually means, and how we could address that at Arla to better support our colleagues. We looked at our culture and how we operated. So that included things like management style, relationships, and how they can have an effect on an individual's mental health and well-being. We recognised a huge need to remove the stigma and negativity surrounding mental health, because mental health has always been a taboo subject. People are actually frightened to go there because they don't understand it, I think. And we wanted to change that perception and encourage our employees to be able to talk openly about mental health and know that we were there to support them. From an output perspective, I think you'll agree, just as you said, a happy workforce is a more productive workforce. Employees are the building blocks of any organisation, and investing in them makes business sense. And it actually can lead to better staff engagement, greater productivity, staff retention, and a reduction in absence, just like you were talking about in your stats at the beginning of the show there. Secondly, for a more human perspective, it's simply the right thing to do. We all have a duty to care for our employees, and I think that's really important that everybody remembers that. From our point of view, what we did to try and be able to do all these things was we appointed mental health first aiders across all our shift, so that we could encourage people to be able to spot the signs of mental health and when someone needs help or is experiencing a crisis in their life even. We work with people every day. They're here more than they are at home. So it's really getting to know your people and how you can better spot the signs, I suppose, when someone is needing help but frightened to ask for that help. Actually, sorry, Lee.
No, I was just going to ask a very quick question there, because you mentioned obviously it was a big project and getting people to change the way they think about it, try and destigmatise that mental health and well-being. Was that more difficult than you anticipated because of the age ranges of your workforce?
Yes, it's still difficult. We're still on that journey. We're working on it. We're so much better now than we were. We've had a lot of success stories on site, but when you think of old school working and old school management style, we've changed and adapted a lot as a business over the years. I've been here over 28 years now, so I've seen a shift and a change in the way people approach things, the way they think about things. Management styles in general is a big one that had to change across the decades that I've been here as well. The old thummy rule and you will do as I say, that just isn't there anymore, and I think everybody needs to recognise that we're in a different world now. So secondly, for that, as I say, that human perspective, it is the right thing to do for employers to invest in their people, have a duty to care for their staff, and that really will go a long way. We've seen the benefits of that. The next one was really important, was for our managers and our team leaders. We put them through a mental health awareness course so they could understand how their behaviours and actions affected individuals on their shift, and that was hugely important. And that helped them to be able to know their people better, which enables them to be able to recognise the signs now when somebody's feeling a wee bit lower or not quite themselves, which is really important. We also have mental health champions at site as well. Now that's because we need to keep it live. We need to keep a focus on mental health. And the way to do that is to have it surrounding us day to day and normalising the negativity surrounding mental health and keeping people talking, because actually it starts with a conversation. Now that conversation is difficult to start. You need to know how to do that. But once you're there, just asking somebody how they feel, but really listening to what they actually say, the response you get. If you know people's traits, you know if they're okay or just saying I'm fine, whatever. So you really need to understand your people and know your people. And I think learning about mental health gives you the opportunity to do that. So we've embedded mental health awareness into our induction and training programs as well, which we're at the beginning of that journey. We've just started that, but it's hugely important as a site for us, because all our colleagues will go through that training and we'll have refreshers. So we keep it live, we keep it real, we normalise that topic, because mental health can be positive, it doesn't have to be negative, but knowing when somebody's going through the poor part of their mental health is really important, and you can actually stop someone from having a deeper crisis if you can intervene at an early stage. And we found that here, which is good. So I'm really proud of the people here for how they've kind of taken it on board and embraced it, because you actually get better engaged staff when you do that as well. So it's been really good. We also have a weekly newsletter. So that goes to all our staff, it goes in our notice board, and we talk about mental health. We feature mental health in it every week, and that in itself helps to take that negativity away and look at mental health in a more positive way. We had COVID coming along, that's just added another dimension in the workplace in its own set of issues. But we'll not go into that just now, but that's just another challenge for us, and with people self-isolating and shielding and things like that. But what I would say to everybody out there is, no matter what size your business is, I think mental health and well-being should be a priority, and if they do that, they will see the benefits of doing that, not only for themselves, but for their workforce, because mental health doesn't discriminate. You can be a director of the company, you can be on a shop floor worker, it affects everyone. So it doesn't matter who you are. So I think it's hugely important, Lee.
Thank you, John. It is hugely important. It's great to know that we have one of the leading employers in the region, Arla, taking this subject so seriously. It's great that we've got Arla, who've got a massive workforce. They've got a much varied workforce in aid. So some are at different stages on that journey. Of course, the next generation of workforce, we are getting ready to see those come into the workplace. At this point, I'd like to bring in my colleague, JT Justin Thomas from Developing the Young Workforce. Good morning, JT. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Med. I'm really well, thank you very much.
It's an interesting conversation, the whole mental health and well-being one. We've had it many times in the office, back and forth. Well, when we could be in an office, you know what I mean, back and forth throughout the course of our conversations together. And you engage with businesses and young people on a daily basis through your role as Developing the Young Workforce. Of course, this generation much more aware and much more, dare I say, conscious of mental health and well-being. What is their understanding of what that subject and what that topic actually means to them?
You're absolutely right. There is more of an understanding and an awareness. And the reason for that is simply because, and businesses may not understand this, but young people, whether they are in education or out of education, have access to some fantastic organizations who actually inform them about what mental health and well-being actually is. So that means that, you know, because of their awareness, their expectation is incredibly high. This has become the norm for them. And that ties in with what Dawn was saying, you know, to be able to normalize this procedure in everyday working life. And I think we all need to, or those of us of a certain age, need to understand now that the days where you didn't talk about things are gone. You know, I certainly remember when I came into business, you had to leave your personal problems and issues at the door. You don't anymore. That it comes in with you. And that's what really businesses have to understand, because there certainly will be a next generation of workforce that are coming in with this perception that, you know, what they want from a business, what they need from that business. If there's an issue that they have, they will express it. So we've got to be ready to be able to say, right, okay, we can support you, we can understand you, while keeping professional, while keeping, you know, the business going. And I think that's going to be one of the main issues that businesses today have to understand. Everybody is an individual. Everybody does have individual needs, requirements. They have their own personal take on what's going on. You can't cluster everybody together in one group anymore. And that's going to be a shift, I think, for a lot of businesses and organizations, but it's certainly one that's going to be high on a new workforce's priorities.
It is interesting because, as you say, Justin, people are individuals now that all come with that individuality, which, let's face it, is why we hire these people in the first place. So we really do need, as managers and leaders, to understand everything that's going on in that person's life. We're going to talk more about this throughout the course of the morning. Thank you very much for just now, JT. So as you can hear, we've got to normalise things. We've got to have these conversations. And sometimes, as Dawn said, we've got to look at our internal culture and how we deal with things ourselves. All those steps, all these changes we can take will be able to help us through this most challenging of time. But with so much to do, it can be overwhelming. Where do you begin? Where do you start? How do you take that first step? It's almost like you need a toolbox which contains all of the right equipment. Hands up, I do not have that toolbox, far from it. But it just so happens, over the course of the past 3 or 4 months, I've been lucky enough to meet a group of people who have got that toolbox and some great tools which will help us on that journey. At this point, I'd like to bring in and welcome Rosie Runciman and Tim Thurston of Team Doctor. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for taking the time. Now, obviously, I'm quite lucky. I've been on some of your webinars. I've seen some of the great contents available and support from you guys. But for people that might not be aware, Rosie, of what Team Doctor is, do you want to just give us a little explainer, if you would?
Team Doctor is, as you say, it's a toolkit to help people in the workplace manage all aspects of health at work. So that is particularly stress, anxiety, sleep problems, nutrition and exercise. So the main issues which affect people's health at work is what we cover, and it's by film. So short films, 3 to 5 minute films, and courses, which is, we have a long experience of working with health and education in that way. So short films has been the sort of proven most effective way to get the right messages across.
Which is great because we all know, again, I'm a fact and stat man, more and more of us consuming video. That's how we get our information. It's easier for us to take it all in. And speaking of video, here we are. We're sitting right now on video, as we have been for the past 3 or 4 months, which is a huge change for businesses, not just in D&G, but across the world. And it's very strange because I'm looking at all your lovely faces in front of me, but 6 months ago, if we were doing something like this, the odds are we would have been at Easterbrook Hall, or we would have been at a coffee shop doing something like this. And also, I mentioned before, JT, we've got a great relationship. We've been working together for around about 3.5, 4 years now. We've got this shorthand, this dynamic. We can tell things about each other by a look or a nod or just a raise of the eyebrow, if you would. We can read each other's body language. So when I come into the office in the morning or JT comes in, you all right, JT? Yep, fine, grand. I know when okay is not okay in Justin in that respect. And he can tell you the same about myself. It's not always the same over something like this, over something on Zoom, is it, Rose? I mean, how can we tell things about people through Zoom because we can't read their body language the way we would normally?
No, it does make it more difficult, but I think all of us, as Dawn was saying earlier, is knowing your team. So what you need to look for is any changes in behaviour. So if normally when you're on a call, you have people who speak a lot, contribute a lot, and they're suddenly really quiet, they're not contributing much, they seem much less upbeat than usual, then there might be a problem. If it's somebody who's normally very quiet and they suddenly can't stop talking, but it appears to be in quite an anxious way, that again is a cause for concern. So it's changes in behaviour, whatever the behaviour normally is, changes over a period, and then that's when you should start to take some action.
Tim, if I can bring you in at this point, because again, it's a case of looking at changes in behaviour and everything else. You're a leader, you're a business leader in many of areas throughout the course of your career. How difficult is it to lead people, to manage people remotely and notice things like that?
Well, it's very difficult, and particularly with the changes that are forced upon us at the moment with home working. So some organisations that I know that I've worked with 6 months ago would never have dreamed of having their workforce working from home, didn't feel it was possible. And now they're having to embrace that. And one of the key drivers of stress and anxiety in the workplace, as Kerry Cooper, the president of the CIPD, states very regularly, is the way that people are managed. So managing people through change, and managing people, particularly at the moment, when they're working remotely, is really, really important. And just if I can elaborate, am I okay to just elaborate on that for a few moments?
Yeah, please.
So it is a very, very important issue, and it requires a major reset to talk to your people. It needs to be a consultation. You need to talk with your people and understand the parameters of their new working role. They are having a new role working from home. They're not going to be able to do some of the things that they did in the office. So there needs to be an understanding of that. And then setup is so important working from home. So people need the skills, materials, and equipment to do their job. They might need new skills, as we're learning how to use Zoom, for example. Don't take it for granted that people understand the technology. The technology is there and can be utilized, but people need to be trained on it. Connectivity is massive. Now, I don't know how your connectivity is, but my connectivity at home is sometimes awful. I've had BT out twice. And it's so frustrating. Piece of research by IBM said that 92% of people's well-being and engagement is affected by the equipment they work with. And of course, technology is the driving force of that. So if you've got poor connectivity, that will drive stress. And if people can't access work systems, all these things need to be taken into consideration. Another aspect as well, which could be really, really difficult for some people, is a proper working space. If you're lucky enough to have a home office, that's great, but not all of your employees are going to be able to do that. So you need to understand that and help them and work with them. One final point in terms of setup. I know you're looking very smart today, Lee. Well done.
Thank you very much. I do like to dress up for these sort of things. You know, any excuse to put a shirt and tie on.
Well, and that you've hit the nail on the head. If you have got, if anybody is aware of the Netflix drama Suits. I mean, it's called Suits because they wear suits, literally. And it's a team of lawyers, isn't it? And they call it their armor. So put your armor on. You feel differently. Leo, I'm sure you feel differently today with a tie on. And, you know, I've let myself down. I haven't got a tie, but I've got a shirt on. And you do feel differently. So that work with your people, make sure they understand that. Maybe have a shave, for example. These little things make a massive difference to the way that people operate. And the final point that I kind of bring it all the way back, and something that Dawn talks about earlier, is development of your management team. Their empathy, they need to be trained in EQ. And if you've got good managers that are empathetic, then, you know, that's great. But several managers aren't. And it's never more important when you're not seeing your people. And therefore that understanding of the self-awareness of themselves and their team is absolutely vital. Sorry to take up so much time there, but I think it's a key issue that people really need to take very, very seriously, and that education process that really does need to be at the forefront of that.
No, Tim, that's not a problem. There's some big things that I picked up on in there, and the one thing that seems to come back time and time again is communication, and that very much seems to be what it is. It's talking, but more importantly, it's listening to what those people are actually saying back to you, and I suppose how they're saying things to you as well, Rosie. I mean, if we pick up some of those things, as you say, changes in temperament, changes in the way people are saying things, people being quiet or people being outgoing, how can we actually have that conversation with them? How do we engage with them if we have a little concern or we are worried about them? Because I wouldn't imagine it would be the easiest conversation to engage with.
No, absolutely. And before I answer that, I would just say, don't feel if you're a sole trader or you don't have a big company background that this isn't relevant to you, because all these issues and what Tim was talking about, you know, it may be you don't have a team, but you might have clients, you might have people you talk to. So all of that is still absolutely relevant. It's just that you haven't necessarily got anyone else to ask. You have to look to yourself. So you're looking for changes in behavior in yourself. You are having to make yourself get up and, you know, look good and sort out your own connectivity. So the issues are the same. It's just that, you know, if you're on your own, it's you who has to deal with them, but you have to recognize them first. So having that conversation, even if you're having it with yourself or somebody in your family has noticed, and can intervene is if you know the person well, it's easier to have the conversation, because you can say, look, I know this isn't like you, what's up? And Dawn was saying earlier, you know, ask them. And one of the top tips from our psychologists, in our films, we have some of the leading specialists in the UK, people you wouldn't normally be able to ask, and they do also ask twice. So don't just say, how are you? You say, no, really, how are you? Because it's asking a second time that they think you really mean it, and they want a proper answer rather than just saying, yeah, fine, thanks, everything's okay. So ask twice, look as though you mean it, and really, as Dawn said, listen to the answer. I mean, I think Arla have pretty much cracked this, but you know, listen to what they're saying. If you don't know them so well, but somebody else in your team does, ask them to have a word with them, because you'll probably get more effectiveness that way, and then you can find out what the issue is and then go on to try to help them with it. You might be lucky enough to have mental health first aiders, as Arla does. If you're a small company and you're not in a position to have them, then there is lots of help available online. Mind, Mental Health First Aid England website, you will find quite a lot of help online there, and they do have chat lines for smaller companies who aren't set up to have sort of facilities in-house.
When we do identify that that conversation needs to be had, I suppose we really need to think as well about our own way of approaching this, don't we? We might need to alter our own body language. We might need to think a little bit more about the tone and the cadence of our voice and such like, which I suppose for a lot of people would be something that they never thought of before, wouldn't it, Rosie?
Yes, I think that's right. And I think, as both JT and Dawn said, you know, the world has changed a lot over the last 10, 20 years in the way that managers behave. I know when I started my first job on the Today programme at the BBC, my editor said to me in rather ruder terms, fit in or get lost. And that was the attitude. Well, that's not the sort of thing people say today. But back in the day, it was quite accepted. And we said, OK, well, we'll just fit in. But it is, you know, we I think are much more attuned to how what we say and we do and our approach affects other people. And I think that was the thing that people just, as long as they got results before, it didn't matter how they approached them. But I think all the data suggests now that actually the better we approach people and think about our own staff, the better the performance is. And I think that's what Arla has already found, and JT was alluding to that earlier. It's just a statistical fact. So if you're listening and you think, well, all this sounds like a bit of effort, it really isn't, and it will pay back. It'll pay back for yourself and for your team and for your productivity.
It is something that we need to discuss about that team and that change, that dynamic. Like you say, the way it's always been is not the way it always needs to be. I suppose that's part of everything we do. It's development, it's changing, it's the evolution of our internal culture when it comes down to it, really, isn't it, Tim? I mean, have you found this when you've been dealing with all the different businesses that you have? How difficult is it to change internal cultures, especially in a region like Dumfries and Galloway, where we have many businesses that have been on the go and for generations?
100%. The culture is the way we see and do things, the way we think, the way we act. It's our paradigm, and it's actually an outcome of many different elements. Just like to flag up a model called the Cultural Web by Richard Seal. It's worth just taking 5 minutes and Googling it and having a look. It's something that I've used in organizations for a long, long while now, and it's a really useful tool. Depicts that 6 elements come together to make your overall culture. I'll quickly run through them, and I want to focus on a couple of them. So your organizational structure, how bureaucratic you are, how flat your structure is, drives your culture. The power structure within your organization. If you've got established employees, if you've got employees that act in a certain way, they will pull your culture in a certain dimension. What you actually do sounds obvious, but what you actually do, if you're rigid in your routines, then that defines your structure. And obviously at the moment, that's something that we're going to talk about. I'm going to refer to again in a moment with home working. Routines are out the window. So that will, by default, change the culture of your organization. How you recognize success, going to talk about management again in a moment, and how you control people, another management issue. And then finally, this is kind of an outcome, what people say about the organization, what people say they believe. Now, that doesn't always have to be true. It becomes a myth, but that defines your culture. So it's a really interesting model. I'm just going to focus on 2 or 3 aspects of that. I'm going to focus on routines, how you recognize success, and how you control people. Using that backdrop of home working kind of as to put it into context, talked before about how managers need to develop their EQ. You need to build a structure of communication with your people so that success is still recognized. When people are working remotely, perversely, they probably overwork rather than underwork. So it was a myth that management thought that, well, I need my people in front of me for them to be productive. And that's been proven, and that's absolutely not the case. As Kerry Cooper says, the way to engage your employees is to give them realistic targets, give them more autonomy, and allow them to get on with it. If they want to work at 3 o'clock in the morning because that suits them, that's really not a problem in the current climate. And we're seeing this change in working patterns, and you need to allow that to really engage your employees. So that control, not being control, having control but not being controlling is really, really important. Having a structure of communication so that people can tell you when they've done well. They want to get recognized. So not micromanaging, but having a structure that regularly reviews performance in a really constructive way. The key driver, and I think Dawn's alluded to this, so the key driver of changing culture, though, starts from the top. You need to get the chief executive, manager and director, and obviously if you're a small business listening today, then you are in the box seat here to change culture. So what you do and how you behave will drive the culture of your organization. If you're a larger organization, such as Arla, then once you've got some of these things in place, you can start to recognize good behavior in certain areas of the organization and benchmark and help use that to improve good behavior. Things like if staff turnover has gone down, if absenteeism's gone down, if you get engagement from your newsletters, all these are indicators that you're changing your culture, and you can help, you can use that to help other parts of the organization. Just a small example of how this really helped a particular industry, the construction industry. 2 or 3 years back, this is a story that Kerry Cooper regularly regales. There was 45 accidents in the construction industry in a particular year. And that's a major issue, a health and safety issue. 45 people died on construction sites. In that same year, 450 people in the construction industry died of suicide. So that shows you, a factor of 10 to 1, mental health outweighed health and safety. So Dawn's point about taking it seriously, and JT's points about how the world has changed. I mean, that was a real punch on the nose for that industry. And several chief executives said, we're going to do something about that. It needs to start from the top.
It does need to start from the top. And again, I think sometimes it can be very difficult if you're working in a large structure where you have many tiers of management and you have somebody at that middle level perhaps that identifies the need for that change. Just either one of you, Tim or Rose, again, how difficult is it to get that conversation from that middle level to the top level if I'm not going to say there's a resistance to it, but the people aren't as on the ball as they should be on this?
So this is all about trying to elevate that message. It is difficult, but if there is enough of a groundswell and the top management level can see the figures and they can see that all the numbers are showing there's going to be more productivity, that is what will drive the change, because in the end, data will tell you it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And engage, it's like anything, isn't it? It's engaging with that individual on their terms. So what's important to them? You've mentioned several things at the top of the show. Is it the bottom line? So then demonstrate the effect that this would have. Dawn, there might be something that you could shed on that from your experience within Arla, because clearly you've been very successful in getting it permeated through the organisation there.
Yeah, to be honest, it does start from the top, and I think figures as well. I don't know if I'm happy or sorry to say that, but the productivity, the bottom line, as you say, does and can have an effect in that. We have seen a reduction in absence. Now, our absence costs can be huge across the business when you've got thousands of employees. So addressing that issue has actually came back and helped us tenfold. And we have seen, I mean, at Lockerbie, for example, our absence is running at year to date 1%. I mean, that's really, really good. We've got great people here, don't get me wrong, we've got a lot of long servants, but investing in your people and engaging them in a positive way regarding mental health and keep promoting that, I think businesses will see a difference in the bottom line. And I think that's what speaks to a lot of businesses as well. And our directors, our vice presidents, who obviously Arla is a global company, they've bought in for that right from the top. And I think that's essential, as you're saying. You can't just play at this. It's, oh, everybody's talking about it, so I should do something. No, you really, really need to engage in it to get the benefit out of it. So I think that's hugely important for everybody to realise that it's not just next year we'll try something else, or it's just a short-term thing. Mental health is here forever now, and it'll just get, if we engage in the proper way now, I think for the future you'll better prepare yourself. We've just started, I think, even being on this journey of ours for a year, we're learning so much about mental health because it's a huge subject. And as I say, it touches all in some way. And I think when people recognise that, that's where you do buy in, you get the buy-in, because some of our vice president actually, he recorded a video himself because he'd suffered from mental health, so he understood it. So if people at the top have actually suffered from mental health or know someone who has suffered from mental health, that gets the buy-in as well because they've lived it and it makes it real for them.
It is true that it is a conversation, it's a journey, and again, these changes don't happen overnight. It's a stepped process that we're all going to have to be on, and when as you said, Dawn, need to realise it is not going to change overnight. Questions coming in. If you do have a question, there's two ways to get in touch. You can either pop it in the Q&A button that's at the bottom of your screen there, or you can send them over to me direct via email. It's lee.med@dgchamber.co.uk. Jane has been in touch. She says, Lee, with all this going on, it's great to have the conversation as a starter. Would things like mindfulness be able to help throughout the course of the conversation and the journey? And I think that is a very good question. But again, mindfulness is one of these things that kind of has a big feeling about it. Rosie, what do you think? Can mindfulness or taking steps toward mindfulness help the workforce in this?
Yeah, absolutely. Mindfulness is very popular at the moment. So some people are skeptical just because it's popular. There are all sorts of tips and techniques that you can use, which will be very helpful in promoting better mental health. Mindfulness is certainly one of them. So is yoga, so is Pilates, so is running, so is walking. You just have to find a thing which suits you. So don't be put off if you try one and you think this isn't for me, it's absolute rubbish, and then you don't do anything at all, because there will be something which suits you, which you find a really good release, a really relaxing outlet. So you have to try several things perhaps before you find out what works. Mindfulness is incredibly helpful in an office situation, because whether you're working at home and you're on Zoom call, which you happen to be finding very stressful, or you're sitting actually in a face-to-face meeting, you can practice mindfulness. You can just dip out for 30 seconds, 1 minute, and then come back a refreshed and less anxious or stressed person. It does take some work, so it's not one of those things that you can just pick up and say, okay, now I can do it. Some people are really, really good at it very quickly. Other people have to spend quite a lot of time training their pathways so that they can be effective in mindfulness. And there are lots of exercises. I mean, we provide lots of little exercises that you can do, mindfulness exercises, but you can just sit at your desk and just tune out, focus on individual things. You can practice mindfulness anywhere. So it is a really useful tool, but if it's not for you, don't worry, because it's not the only one.
That's good. Well, we're going to come to more of those tools in just a moment, but we've got a question came in from Sean. This one is for Tim. He says, we have been talking to our colleagues on an ongoing basis, but one thing that is coming up time and time again is a reluctance of people to go back to the traditional workplace in the office. How can we continue this conversation? And again, I think that's a conversation that many people are going to be having. They're not ready to fully embrace going back to the way things were. But at the same time, they know that home working is adaptable as we have been through this is not necessarily going to be the best for that business in the future. How can that dialogue continue?
That's a real issue, isn't it? And one that's clearly going to continue over the next probably 6 months at least. Difficult one here. I don't think there's a complete right and wrong answer. It's a journey that you need to go on with your people individually. Can you be flexible as an organisation? Do you really need people to come back into the office? Now, on occasions you will. There will be tasks that maybe need to be done from that office. And if that is the case, then consult with your people, make them aware of why you would need them to do that role. My experience is that, you know, as long as you do that correctly and you do take the right precautions, and of course it's very expensive to do that. You know, I know of an organisation, it's a big organisation, and I suspect Arla's had to invest an awful lot of money as well in social distancing. We're talking thousands of pounds sometimes needs to be invested. But you might need to do that for your organisation, and you obviously need to explain that to your workforce. But trust your people, as we talked about earlier. Most jobs can be done. I do think more than half jobs can be done remotely. Set those realistic targets, support your people. And as Kerry Cooper talks about this on his webinars, there's probably a mix is going to be the way forward. You do need to see your people. Exclusive remote working is not the way forward. And there is probably a way that you can engage with your people, whether it be in your office or even, you know, even in a coffee shop to meet up, you know, properly socially distancing, keep that dialogue going with them. There is a caveat with this as a health warning. You know, I know an employment lawyer very well, and he thinks this could be a big litigation issue. So, you know, if you do really need your employees to come back to your organisation because that is essential for your business, then you do need to follow the correct procedure. Take advice on it and make sure you are properly socially distancing. If you can compromise, that would be the way forward. But yeah, it's a one-to-one conversation, and you know, don't be heavy-handed with it, because I think you'll undo any good work that you've done in terms of engaging with your workforce previously.
And one thing I'd just add to that, if I may, Lee, is that we're doing some research with particularly younger people. So it tends to be the demographic, you know, if you're older, a lot of people don't want to go back into the office because it suits them very well to be at home. But when you're young and a lot of your social life does revolve around your colleagues in the office, it can be very lonely if you aren't having that social engagement. And some companies in London which are shut but were traditionally very sociable seem to have got around it. You know, they're keeping to the 6-person rule. Sorry, not for you in Scotland, where it's different, but they are absolutely following social rules. But where the offices are closed, they're arranging things in the evening, even if it's in very small groups, so that you still get that social aspect, which for younger people is much, much more important and does impact very severely on their mental health.
There are lots of questions coming in, and we're not going to be able to touch on them all. But at the same time, with all these questions, there must be a way that we can actually get all these answers. Sometimes it's possible you can pick up the phone, you can speak to us at the Chamber of Commerce, you can speak to your colleagues. If you're lucky enough to have an HR department, something like they have in Arla, then you can go and speak to Dawn. But for other people, they don't have that support. Rosie, is there somewhere we can actually find the answers to our questions and so much more?
Well, shall I just give you a very quick explanation of what the team doctor does a little bit more? Would that be a good time? Okay, very, very briefly then. Let me just start a little. I'm just going to play you a little film, everybody, if you can all see that. And it'll just give you briefly a few more details about Team Doctor.
Let's think about the UK workforce and its health. Even before COVID, more than half of all long-term sickness absence was caused by stress at work. Annual cost to the economy, £100 billion. The Covid-19 pandemic itself is likely to increase mental ill health. Both the illness itself and the measures taken to protect people. The coming economic recession will also increase mental ill health. After the 2008 recession, 500,000 additional people experienced mental health problems. So are UK companies doing enough to address mental health? Not according to Business in the Community. Companies need to do more now, more than ever. Team Doctor's online course is an essential tool to help your team understand more about stress in the workplace and how to cope with it. The course is split into 4 modules, all based on short, easy to understand films, with tips and advice from some of the UK's leading experts. Each module takes about 30 minutes to complete, but you can go at your own pace, in your own time. Do the whole course in one go if you have time, or just go one film at a time. Complete it when you're ready. The course is easy to use. It's designed to educate, but also to motivate. And give people a sense of achievement. With links to important websites and documents in the Resources tab. The course is CPD accredited. On completion, users gain 3 CPD points and a certificate. The course is designed to improve outcomes through greater awareness, understanding, and ultimately behaviour change. Crucially, we provide solutions on a wide range of subjects. You may have programs and schemes in place already. Team Doctor will not replace, but will complement them. Use it when new employees join as part of your induction process, or when people are promoted or change jobs, or as part of your mental health awareness program, or simply when you think people might benefit. Team Doctor's production team is the UK's leading provider of film and audio content designed to help people take control of their health and well-being. Team Doctor films are exceptionally popular with users. Mental ill health is going to increase because of COVID-19 and the recession. It is no longer okay to do nothing.
I think I will leave it there, because if there are questions, I know we haven't got much time left, so probably better to get the questions in than me. But anyway, you get an idea of what it is. It's short films which are very well evaluated within the NHS, so we know they work. And the point is, I think that they're available 24/7. So Dawn made the point that whatever you provide for people, you have to keep it up. You have to sustain that information, because a course or any sort of intervention, once it's gone, people need to be reminded. And therefore, if you can keep giving them a film a week, if you can text a film a week, or you can just give them little reminders on a regular basis, then it just keeps up the momentum. And so people don't forget about it and think, oh yeah, that was something I did last year and now I'm moving on to the next thing.
Rosie, can I just say, sorry Lee, but I managed to have a sneak peek of the videos, which was great because Tim and Rosie sent them to me just to have a look at. And I found them excellent, and they're really user friendly, even for someone like me, who's maybe not as great in a computer as I probably should be, but it is excellent. They are, and they cover all different topics, and it really makes it easy to understand. So if anybody was thinking about it, I would really consider speaking to Rosie and Tim with regards to that, because they're great short videos and straight to the point, and helping people understand mental health, and both from a positive way as well as how to support people, so how we can promote mental health in the workplace as well.
I think what's great about the fact that it is video in the libraries there and it's available for people that want to explore it at teamdoctor.org is the fact that, you know, once your team have access to these, they don't actually need to, I'm not going to say they don't need to be having the conversation with yourself, but if an individual is feeling a little bit unsure about themselves or what's going on, they can actually watch these videos, they can take the steps within there, and that might even help them in coming and speaking to someone about their own state of mind, their own what's going on in their own life. Have you found that has been a benefit of these videos, Rosie?
Absolutely, and NHS evaluations have shown a really big increase in behaviour change. So everything, all our content is aimed at getting people to understand what the problem is, prevent problems occurring, and if there are problems, then introducing behaviour change, which will sort them out.
That's great. We've got questions coming in asking actually about the content, about the videos, and say how easy is it to access? So I suppose you can do these if you're on a desktop, which is great. But what if people want to access these remotely? If they want to access them on the go, is it easy enough to do?
It's really easy. There's an app, there's a website, an organisation can just text out links, really, really easy. It's one click to watch the library or to watch individual films.
We've got more questions coming in here. Alison, thank you very much. Says, how difficult is it to go back with people that have been in the company or in the organisation for a long time to address this when you, in your role, might actually only be quite new? And I suppose that is a massive challenge, isn't it?
Shall I? Yeah, I'll take that. Shall I? Yep. So I think that's a really, really good point, and that's where the film library and experts take the lead. So you may have even noticed that when Rosie and I have spoken just now, we've referred to our experts. We know what we know, but there's a lot more out there that can be accessed. So I think that's the point. You can take the lead and facilitate, but you're not going to have all the answers. And I think, you know, use experts within your organisation, and use, you know, a solution like the Team Doctor to make sure that your message gets over. And I think people will appreciate that they're being supported.
Hey, Claire's been in touch. Thank you very much for that answer, Tim. Again, you say it's amazing how much is there for support, and that is something which Claire has been asking. Exactly what is involved in this? Is this just a mental health program? And the Team Doctor, from what I've been aware of it when I've been looking into this with you guys, is so very much more, isn't it? This is just a building block of that big toolbox we're talking about.
Yes, so there is a course on looking after your mental health at work. There's 51 films which cover all the aspects. When we did a focus group, when we developed the content, we asked big employers and small employers and employees what the most important things were in the workplace. And we also went to Mind to talk about the sort of issues which cause problems with health. And that is why we came up with the films we did. So there are 21 films on stress and anxiety and relaxation techniques, and then a whole host of films on sleep, and then diet, and making sure you get the best possible diet, nutrition during the day, and also the exercise that you can build into the day, all of which just lead to better health outcomes. In addition, we have available and a whole other suite of films. So if you are interested in other conditions for your staff, if you have a lot of staff with diabetes, for example, or you have staff who have parents with dementia, there is a big dementia library, huge diabetes library of 60 films, 40 films on dementia. And these were done with the national NHS National Leads, Alzheimer's Society, and so on. So there's a big resource there, heart failure, back pain, again done with the biggest UK charity for back pain. So there is a resource of another 300 films and more structured education, if that's of interest to your workforce.
It really is well worth having a look at the full range of support and tools in that box that are available at teamdoctor.org. This has been the first of what is going to be a series of conversations, a series of webinars that we are going to be running over the next few months about mental health, mental well-being, and a whole host of other things. You can find out more about those by visiting our website, that at dgchamber.co.uk. If you want to go back and watch any of this again, it's going to be on our YouTube and our Facebook channels from around about lunchtime today. All that's left for me is to say thank you very, very much to our guests we've had this morning. JT Justin Thomas from Developing the Young Workforce. We've had Dawn from Arlo. We've had Rosie and Tim from the Team Doctor. Again, thank you all so much for taking the time out today. And of course, we hope that this past 60 minutes will be the start of the most important conversation you ever have. For Lee Med, this has been DG Chamber. We'll catch with you again very, very soon.